a lot of what people are interested in nowadays from an employment engagement is their own professional development and their capability development. It's a key thing for people is growing their skills and their competencies. So what should employees expect from the professional development perspective from their employer or from their manager in a remote or a virtual setting? Is it different? Should the expectations be different?
I think maybe expectations of the world will be a little bit different. So if like how I like to think about learning in a professional context, and I'm certainly the first, I didn't make this up, but people say that 70% of your learning comes on the job, 20% comes from stretch projects, and that 10% comes from external sources. So like conferences or trainings and stuff. I mean, we're probably not going to be going to too many in-person conferences or trainings anytime soon. So of course, there are virtual webinars and things like that, but you can't, I don't think even in, physical office times, you can't rely too much on that. You're probably not going to be able to like job shadow as much as you can or have that like in the moment feedback. But that doesn't mean that you can't create deliberate opportunities for feedback. And that might be a case of as an employee, kind of oversharing what you're working on and proactively asking for that feedback, which can be uncomfortable. But if you're really keen and passionate to develop, then I think that's something to build into how you operate.
Yeah, and perhaps it's a case of if you're a leader, to really get into the nitty-gritty of what this person wants to develop and create a plan around those things and make it structured. Because it does seem that if you're not structured in this approach, that gaps are going to happen, right? And people are going to fall into those gaps and not really know what they should do next.
Having a plan is like obviously super important. I think people can get so caught up in like once a year you sit down with your manager and you go through like your professional development template and you work through what your goals are, and they've got to be SMART goals and all that kind of carry on, which is ultimately just a checkbox exercise, unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say that, but it's true. So from a development perspective, what I'm always really interested in is helping managers to upskill in their own capability as a coach. So like, how can you be a better active listener to your employee? How can you be better at helping them find their why? And that will go, that will help exponentially when it comes to, hey, we've got to do our sprint planning for the next 3 months. Like, I know that you want to work on these things. How can we take the work that we already need to do, and how can we make sure that in that time you are getting some development out of those projects? Because I think, unfortunately, like that old way of doing a professional development plan where you literally sit down once a year, like I'm so happy to say goodbye to that, because I just think it's pointless.
Yeah. And I guess that kind of leads very nicely into what are the things that managers need to think about being of top priority for a virtual person as far as professional and capability development goes. Like, are there specific things that they need to think about? Yeah,
I read as like a pre-answer to my answer. I read a great article a little while ago, and I can't remember who wrote it, but maybe I'll have to try and dig it up. Was around, as a manager, if you are really going to be talking a lot about what's on your plate, your employees will perceive you as really busy, and so thus they won't come forward and ask questions. So as a manager, it's super easy to be like, hey everyone, your daily stand-up or whatever, oh, I've got all this on my plate today, I'm super busy, I've got to do this, this and this. Like the subtext of that your employees will hear is, oh, my manager's actually really busy, and so I probably shouldn't bother them with all the stuff. I think as a remote manager, if an employee is reaching out to you for feedback or to ask a question, it's probably taken a little bit of a leap of faith in asking you that. And so you really need to honor that and give them, as much time as they need. It doesn't mean drop everything right now, but hey, yeah, cool. Can we catch up about that in 30 minutes, or can we catch up about that this afternoon? And everyone's different, just like in the office, some people, when you sit down with them and you want to have a one-on-one, some people have nothing to say and it's crickets. And then some people have heaps and they want to talk to you for ages, and that won't change. I'm a big fan of helping people find their why. Like if 10 years ago, if I started out my career and my manager had mapped out a career plan for me, there would be no way that I would be where I am now. I'd be off in another direction. But where I'm super happy where I am and I feel so grateful. And so it's about as a manager, how do you enable that person to come up with their own goals and their own kind of plan around how they want to develop, because ultimately that's what's going to get them the most buy-in. So how can you as a manager really upskill yourself in active listening, helping people find their why, helping people set their own goals, and then helping people drive that accountability around those goals as well. And that's really subtle. That can be really subtle things. It's not a huge change for some people. It might just be a slight mindset shift. But I think that really is what's most effective.
Yeah, okay, that's really clear. When you think about the people that came on board into that remote environment, and some of the skills or competencies, capabilities that they didn't have, you've talked about the manager piece. Is there anything that kind of is a commonplace lacking for people coming into a remote environment?
I think that maybe the biggest thing, if somebody was coming in as a new manager, I guess you just have to put yourself into the employee's shoes if they hadn't heard from you for a week. As an example, if I was sitting there and I hadn't talked to my manager all week, I'm the type of person that would go, oh, maybe something's wrong. Some people that might not bother them, but I think getting into the habit of just like little social interactions here and there can really make a big difference. I think that, I'm also a big fan of never giving feedback to a human that you would give to a dog. So if you'd probably say to a dog like, oh, good, good job, that was really good. You probably need to say something a little bit more like meaningful to a human around that. The more senior we get in our career, the less feedback we get. And so, having somebody to tell you, good job, keep doing what you're doing, is like so unmeaningful. And so how can you just even pull out one thing that you actually really appreciated out of what they did? Something specific. And so it's the specificness of the feedback and that regular contact if your person in your team, if that's what they need.
If that's what their style is,
If that's what their style is, exactly.
And from the other side of things, like when an employee is entering a virtual team, is there anything specific like, hey, this is typically what we've seen is that people aren't ready for this thing, and so if you're a manager, try and help them out with this thing.
I think it comes back to something that you and I were talking about last week around feeling done at the end of the day. There's never a day for most people, even in an office, where you go, wow, I crossed off every single thing that I had to do today and there is literally no more work for me to do. It just doesn't happen. The work never ends, right? We could be going and going and going. And so how can you help people feel, or as somebody new coming into a team, like what is done today for you? Is it helping prioritize? Is it, I needed to get these exact things, these 3 things done today, and that's all, and cool, I've done that, so I can close my laptop and walk from my living room into my kitchen and feel done? Or is it something else that helps them feel done for the day? Because particularly if people don't have like a natural signal to the end of their day. So when I was working fully remotely, when the rest of the world wasn't, my signal that I needed to stop was my partner coming home. But if you live in a flat with other people your age, or you live alone, you have no done signal.
Natural stoppage.
Natural stop. So you're probably going to look up and it's going to be 8 p.m. and you've not even eaten anything all day. So how can you build those little signals into your day yourself? Priorities or whatever it is that's just going to help you feel like you've accomplished something and you're okay to close that laptop.
Awesome. Look, that's really cool. Thank you for that. That kind of covers off the questions for this round. So next time we're going to talk about how to manage performance in those teams and what kind of high performance looks like, and the tools and practices that we can use to be able to create that. Awesome. Thank you again, Vanessa. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jules.
Thanks. Bye.